No one ever expected a small Nordic country to challenge the most expensive fighter program in the history of aviation, and yet, that's exactly what just happened. For years, the F-35 was treated as untouchable, the crown jewel of American air power, the fighter every NATO nation was supposed to depend on. It was sleek, stealthy, and backed by a $1 trillion project. The message was simple: if you want to stay relevant in modern air warfare, you buy the F-35. But recently, during a series of evaluations and exercises, something quietly slipped through the cracks, something leaner, sharper, and alarmingly efficient. Sweden's Gripen E, a fighter that costs a fraction of the F-35, operates in the shadows of forests, highways, and frozen lakes, and just exposed a weakness in America's most prized jet. This isn't the story of a bigger jet beating a smaller one, it's the story of a smarter jet reminding the world that agility still matters. In a world obsessed with stealth, Sweden chose something different. While the United States poured decades and billions into developing a fighter that could hide from enemy radar, Sweden asked a different question. What if we can't hide? What if the enemy sees us? What happens then? This mindset came from necessity. Sweden isn't a superpower. It doesn't have 800 overseas bases. It doesn't have 11 aircraft carriers cruising across the oceans. So, instead of building a Ghost, Sweden built a Hunter. The Gripen E doesn't rely on being invisible, it relies on being unpredictable, hard to track, hard to jam, hard to kill. It uses electronic warfare like a conductor leading chaos. Instead of hiding from radar, it bends radar, distorts it, confuses it. It turns the battlefield into a hall of mirrors, where nothing appears where it actually is. While the F-35 tries to avoid detection, the Gripen E makes detection meaningless. And that is where the weakness of the F-35 is exposed. The F-35's stealth is extraordinary, but stealth is not invincible. Stealth only works when the paint is intact, the angles remain perfect, the enemy radar is from a certain generation, and the environment is controlled. But wars don't care about conditions. They are messy, unpredictable, full of sand, rain, snow, and improvisation. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The F-35 needs pristine bases, sheltered hangars, and constant maintenance just to stay stealthy. While the F-35 demands a palace, the Gripen asks for a driveway. The world started paying attention during joint NATO air drills. In several exercises across Europe, the Gripen, even older variants, demonstrated something surprising. It could detect, track, and even simulate kills on stealth aircraft under certain conditions, not because it was more powerful, not because it was faster, but because it leveraged a smarter electronic warfare suite. You don't fight stealth with brute strength, you fight stealth with algorithms. The Gripen wasn't trying to see the F-35, instead, it was watching the trail of disruption the F-35 left in the electromagnetic spectrum. It's kind of like seeing footprints instead of the person. Silent jet? Yes. Silent environment? Never. And once that weakness was understood, everything changed. Then came the turning point. Brazil, a massive territory nation with a tight defense budget, evaluated both platforms. Canada, under pressure from allies, still ran comparison studies. Finland studied operational cost across decades. And what they saw was the same pattern. The F-35 was powerful, but expensive to maintain. It needed support infrastructure many countries didn't have. And its stealth advantage could be challenged by evolving electronic warfare. Sweden had predicted this years earlier. They didn't try to outrun the giant, they built a jet that could outsmart it. In one evaluation, the Gripen's EW system reportedly blinded advanced radar platforms, not permanently, just long enough to strike, long enough to survive. Survival. That's the real battlefield currency. And now the world is rethinking everything. Countries are asking themselves, do we want a fighter that looks unbeatable on paper, or a fighter designed for the messy reality of war? Do we want the most expensive jet ever made, or the jet most likely to still be flying on day 30 of the war? Because the F-35 is brilliant when supported by satellites, AWACS aircraft, dedicated tankers and perfect logistics, but wars rarely begin in perfect conditions. Sometimes, wars begin with surprise, a missile strike, a blackout, a runway destroyed in the first hour. In that scenario, the jet that can take off from a rural highway wins, the jet that refuels in the forest wins, the jet that repairs in a garage wins. That jet, well, is the Gripen. And perhaps the most ironic part, Sweden didn't build Gripen E to compete with the F-35, they built it to defend Sweden, to survive the first strike, to keep flying when everything else is burning. But in doing so, they accidentally built the most relevant fighter of the next era, an era not defined by who has the biggest budget, but by who adapts fastest. Technology is shifting, radars are shifting, warfare is shifting. And while the world bragged about stealth, Sweden quietly prepared for the moment stealth wouldn't matter. That moment is getting closer. So, what happens next? Nations are waking up to a question that was honestly unthinkable a decade ago. Is the F-35 actually the future? Or just the most expensive symbol of it? So, does the world need more invisible aircraft, or more survivable ones? Does victory go to the giant, or to the one who can move when the giant stops? The answers won't be decided in boardrooms or defense expos, they'll be decided in the air, in combat we hope never comes. But if it does, one jet is ready to fly without permission, without runways, without GPS, without the luxury of time. And that jet was built in a small, quiet Nordic workshop by people who understood that survival is the ultimate weapon. In a sky full of giants, the smartest fighter isn't the one that disappears, it's the one that refuses to die.